To all who shall see these presents, greetings. Ruckdog here, and welcome back to Captain of Industry. This is the alpha build, version 2.5, as you see down here in the corner. This is technically my second video for Captain of Industry. The first video was essentially a blind playthrough startup, where fired up the game for the first time, jumped into it, tried to figure out how a few things worked, and it, as you might have expected, went a little rough. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start a brand new game, and we're going to try this from the top, right? I have learned a couple of things playing off screen that I'll talk about as we go here. But the bottom line is there are some ways to paint yourself into a corner pretty early on. I'm going to see if I can avoid those. So I'm going to be clicking through a few of those tutorial messages pretty fast. So if you were trying to read all of that, I apologize. I don't want to waste your time by trying to read it to you in the course of the video here. So I'm going to go ahead and pause this for just a second so I can give you a quick layout. We've got the ship in the port right here. We've got our settlement, a couple little container towns. Nice little box houses here. Very nice, very nice. Alternative lifestyles. We got a food mart. That's good. And then we've also got our abandoned communications station, which is going to provide us with some metal scrap. And what's that metal scrap being used for, you might ask? Well, what we have is the ability to build a coal maker that turns wood into coal. So this is more like charcoal. Then we have a blast furnace. And this blast furnace is going to take the scrap from the radio tower, melt it down, and turn it into molten iron. That then goes into this metal caster that we're building right here. So we'll go ahead and hit play here. And we're going to start getting this building started. You can see the trucks are getting ready to haul the construction materials out of our base. I'm also going to take this truck right here and send it down to start harvesting some trees, because we're going to need that for our coal maker. And so as you see here, the trucks roll up and they start putting down the materials. And we are going to be very quickly off to the races here. Now there's one other thing that I'm going to have to build, and that's some transport. So first of all, we have to have a way for the molten iron to get from the blast furnace to the caster, so we'll build that right there. The other thing we're going to need is a smokestack to collect waste gases from both the coal maker and the blast furnace. So we're going to build that, and now we have to connect it up with some pipes. So we'll connect our coal maker. Yep, there we go. And we'll connect up our blast furnace. There we go. And now we're really up to the races. Yep. So we got our iron smelter ready to go here. We've got our scrap being slowly pulled from the radio tower and being brought over to our blast furnace. Okay. Now we've got everything hooked up, and we've got some initial coal coming down. We've got all the scrap we need. So as soon as we get some of our coal going into there, we're going to be able to start melting down some iron. Now, the next thing we need to start working on is research, right? There's a whole research tree. So I'm going to take and build a research lab up here. Sort of arbitrary where you place it. I'm just going to put it over here by the port, because that seems like it's the spot where it'll be out of the way. And that will allow us to start advancing up the tech tree. And we start with a few basic technologies, but then we're going to have to start working on construction to make more construction parts. Those are what allows us to build buildings and vehicles. We're going to have to learn some basic farming so we can start growing food for ourselves. And then we'll have to start doing some vehicles and mining. So lots to do with the research. All right, so research is ready. My basic strategy here is going to be to just keep working everything that's in a vertical line one after the other. So we'll start with construction. One of the things that I did find during my previous playthrough, this is one of those paint yourself into a corner problems, is you really need to make sure that you unlock your mining capability before you run out of scrap from your radio tower. Because if you don't have the ability to mine your own iron ore by the time all of this is depleted, you're going to be in trouble, because you don't really have much of a way to get any kind of iron ore. It's not like you can deconstruct buildings to get iron ore back. when you deconstruct buildings, you just get the construction parts back. So not ideal, not ideal. We'll go ahead and clear out some of these tutorial messages here. Again, I've read all those previously. Basically, they're just telling us how to do some things I'm already showing you how to do, so I figure it's better to show vice tell. But they're talking about how to set up this basic iron production line, talking about your basic research here. Yeah, so now we're basically waiting for our research to complete here. Once we've got our research complete, we're going to be able to move on to the next step, which is finding a way to use this iron that we're slowly stockpiling here and turn that into construction parts. So that's going to be the next big step. So you notice our unity, right? So this is an important statistics here, right? Because it's basically a happiness type of thing. And right now, thanks to our food, we're slowly creeping up. We have a plus 0.5 per month. Now the problem is doing things like building a radio beacon to get more people attracted to the island will actually drive our unity downwards. So this is going to be a careful thing to manage, because one of the things that unity can be spent on is rushing construction of certain key projects, right? And that's all well and good, but if your unity has been tanked because of some poor decision making, well, then it's going to be somewhat more difficult to progress at certain points in the game, or at least I imagine that'll be the case. So we have our tree mining going down here. Now there is one thing I could look at doing, right, which is we could look at storages. But at this point, well, we don't really have those unlocked yet, and we're really not producing too much of a surplus such that we would need to have a lot of storage going on. So for now, we're just going to keep working on this iron production here until we get through the researching for our construction, and then we'll immediately start rolling into building those construction materials like I said. We're getting very close. All right, there we go. So construction is complete. So now let's go ahead and get basic farming started so that we can start growing food. So you do have a starting supply of food, right? But that does go down over time because you're not producing anything to replenish it. And so if you don't get your farms unlocked in time before you run out of your starting supply of food, well, guess what? It's another way that you can sort of paint yourself into a corner and have to restart your game. Ask me how I know. Anyway, let's go ahead and get our assembly building started, okay? So this is going to be a consumer of the molten iron, or the cast iron that we're making here in our casting facility. And you see this is going to use wood and that iron to make these construction parts, which you can see we have 173 of right now, but we're going to start drawing those down pretty quick. And since we're going to have two buildings now that are using wood, the assembly building and the coal maker, we're going to go ahead and assign a second truck to go down and start working on pulling down some trees for wood, just so that we don't run short on our wood supply. All right, there we go. So now we are in the process of building our construction parts. Exciting. All right, I'm going to speed this up just a little bit, just so we can sort of get to our basic farming a little more quickly. Really, at this point, we're sort of just treading water with some of our production, and we are pending the completion of a couple of other key technologies before we start expanding even more. What we see here is that we're more or less keeping pace okay with our storage. We don't have anything that's completely overwhelmed yet as far as storage goes. Very, very possible that we'll have to expand this basic production line later with additional blast furnaces and additional casting. This is just a very basic starter production line, essentially. Okay, so our farm is ready. So let's go ahead and move on to vehicles and mining and get that working so that we can start mining our own ore. That'll be the next thing. Okay, so now that we have farms unlocked, I want to go ahead and build a couple of those. So we'll build one sort of, yeah, it'll fit right there, good. And we'll build a second one right here. There we go. And our trucks are going to zip around and provide the materials there, start getting those constructed. And what this is going to allow us to do, as I said, is grow food. Right now we only have 2 basic crops available. That little international no sign there over the farm indicates that no crops are selected. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put up a crop rotation. So we're going to start potatoes, this green manure, potato, green manure, and then we're going to sort of cycle through. And for this one, we're actually going to start with the green manure and then go potato. And basically, this is setting up kind of the alternating rotation so that at least one farm will always be producing food is the idea. Not sure if that's strictly necessary yet. I haven't gotten too deep into food production, but that seems like a way to go. And it's a little trick and tactic that I've used in other management games to try and balance food production like that. The one that immediately springs to mind is Surviving Mars. Had to do that quite a bit in Surviving Mars to make sure that your farms are always providing some kind of food to somebody. Now, one of the things that's interesting is that there is a lack of water here. And so if I go down here and look at my layers, you can see that this is where the water table is at. And in short order here, I'm going to be unlocking the ability to drill for wells and pull water up that way. But until I do, we're kind of stuck without the ability to provide water directly to the crops. So we're going to be limited to what Mother Nature provides, which might cause some delays with our harvests. That being said, I'm not so sure that's a huge problem just because the amount of food that I'm using right now is relatively limited, and so therefore I should be able to keep up with demand even with those inefficiencies that are being generated by a lack of water. Irrigation, essentially. We'll just have to see how it goes. Getting very close to our vehicles and mining. As you can see here, we're getting down to about half or so of the communication station left. We've used about half of it. And so that's going to be something I'm keeping an eye on just because I don't want us to run out of the ability to make iron before we have a mine up and running. Okay, vehicles and mining. I'm going to go ahead and hit pause here for a second. All right, so now we've got vehicles and mining, we've got some interesting choices to make with regards to our research. So we could go power and beacon, okay? And what this allows us to do is build a diesel generator and a beacon. And that beacon is important because it's what allows us to bring new people to the island. And I'm going to go ahead and start that research. I know that this is important because in short order here, as we start to set up our mining capabilities, we're going to find that we're running short on people. All right, so now that we've got our research for power and beacon set up, let's go ahead and start rolling the clock again. Now we're getting some rain, so that's helpful. That is providing some water for our crops. You can see how the water level here is creeping up. Of course, you don't necessarily want to rely on your rainfall to provide your water to your crops, but it's been a little bit yet before we'll be able to get the water and irrigation researched. Now I'm going to pause it again real quick here, just for a moment, so we can get our mining set up. So first things first, let's go ahead and get a vehicles depot built. Right? That's what's going to allow us to build an excavator, which is important. Then we're going to be building not 1, but 2 mining control towers. And why 2, do you ask? Well, what's going to happen is this mining control tower is going to have an overlay here onto this deposit of iron ore, and that's going to allow us to mine the iron ore. But now there's going to be some byproducts from that, and we have to have a place to dump those. So this second tower is going to provide us with an area that we can dump the waste materials being generated by our mining. Why did I put this tower right here? Well, if you notice, we've got this ridge right here. And what I want to be able to do is I want to be able to have a ramp to drive up and over this ridge. So I'm going to use basically the cast-offs from this mining operation and use it for building that ramp. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and hit play here so that can start building on those two structures. The next thing what I have to do is I'm going to have to start working on my areas that I actually want to mine. And so this is another little tricky bit right here. So you can see here, basically what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to set up a little bit of a level area here. And this is just telling the system whether it should go up, down, or straight ahead. And so this is just basically telling my people that are working on the mines, hey, this is how we want all of this to go, essentially. And now over here, since I'm going to want to set up a ramp, right? I'm going to have to change myself to a ramp, and I'm going to have to rotate it around to the way I want it. Yep, there we go. And then we're basically just going to sort of build it up here. Now I'm sort of just eyeballing the distance away that I need to have started my ramp from. So it's not an exact science, it's just sort of a guesstimate. But it seems like it's pretty good. It seems like it's pretty close. Yeah, doesn't seem too bad at all. Seems pretty reasonable. Now you'll notice that these last 9 squares I've got here are showing up as red, right? And that's because what I need to do is I need to adjust my area so that it encompasses essentially the entirety of the ramp, like so. And we'll go ahead and assign a truck to it. Now, we've got our vehicle depot built in the meantime, so let's go ahead and get a couple of excavators constructed. This is using copper. I have 300 copper as part of my starting resources. That is going to last for a little while, but of course I'll eventually want to start mining copper as well. Go ahead and build a couple more trucks while we're at it. Okay, and so that should be our basic mining setup. The big drawback or the big bottleneck right now is going to be getting to an excavator. As you can see, it takes a little bit of time for the excavators to pop out. So we're going to go ahead and time accelerate because now we're essentially waiting for the research to complete and the excavators to build. Once we get through that, we'll actually be able to see our little mining start to show up here. Of course, our food is still doing its thing up here. It's good that we're getting some more rain here. Really need to get to the point where I'm doing some motorcycles drive by outside, sorry. It's really getting to the point where we need to really look at some of that water irrigation. So that'll be something that we're going to have to look at here pretty soon on the tech tree. But for now, you know, this is doing fine. All right, so here we go. So we now have our first excavator. So we're going to go ahead and assign that to our mine. And this is good because we're now more than half done with cleaning up the iron ore from here. Could I right now start looking at expanding my iron production? And the answer to that is yes. Although it's not really a crisis right now because it seems like my iron production is not really bottlenecking anything too much. We're still doing okay with construction parts. So I think we're okay for now. So this little symbol right here, this like stacked boxes symbol, is telling us that this truck has iron ore in it, but it doesn't have anywhere to deliver it. So I think that's probably a good sign that we need to make sure we select this recipe, because that's going to accept the iron ore now. So there we go. Now our truck's coming down, delivering that iron ore, and we're no longer bottlenecked. Okay, let's go ahead and pause it real quick here, because we just got our power and beacon technology researched. So next thing up we have to consider is either settlement water or settlement maintenance. It's going to be a tough choice because we really do need both. Since we're not in an epic food crisis right now, let's go ahead and go with maintenance first. Start that research. And let's go ahead and look at expanding our production a little bit. Now we're sort of limited in just how far we can expand it, because we are still somewhat people limited. So I think what we can do is we can go ahead and look at just making another metal caster. And we can look at connecting that up to the second output on our blast furnace. Oh, come on now. Am I clicking on the wrong spot? Ah, there we go. I'm not sure why it's giving me so much trouble here. I wonder if it's complaining about this transport there. Let me go ahead and put it into play real quick. So this is something that I've noticed in a couple of situations happening, where the molten channels and the pipes for the exhaust gases don't seem to play super well. And so you basically have to put the molten channels down first and then the gas lines. All right, so there's the molten channel. And then here goes the exhaust gas. Yeah, there we go. That seemed to work fine. So I'm going to guess that was just sort of an order of operations bust on my part. Okay, well, anyway. In the meantime, let's go ahead and get our diesel generator built. Now, this game, the power grid's fairly abstracted. You don't actually connect everything with generators and power lines and switches and all this other type of stuff. It appears that it's abstracted to the point where anything that's built for power generation provides a global boost to the overall power level available to buildings that use power. And what building do we need to build that uses power? Well, the beacon. So we're going to go ahead and put our beacon up here right by the coast, because that's where you would put a lighthouse, I would think. So there's some pluses and minuses with building the beacon. Positives, it brings more people to the island. Negatives, it provides a drain on our Unity. So what I expect to happen is once we get our beacon built, we're going to see our Unity shift from plus 0.5 a month down to negative 0.5 a month. There's going to be a net -1 to our total Unity economy. And unfortunately, I'm not entirely clear on just how to improve that, to be honest with you. It is not clear to me exactly what will be researched down the line to provide a boost to our Unity. But that's something we're going to have to work towards. Still have repairs to do. Still have our shipyard here. All of that will be coming into play later, I'm sure. Now let's see here. Why can't it drop off iron ore? Not quite sure yet. Well, anyway, so the beacon's now ready, and as you can see up here, our Unity has dropped to a negative 0.5 per month, as I expected. But if we click on this here, we'll see that we should be getting 16 people here pretty soon. So that is overall good news, because we are starting to get a little low on workers. And in order to expand our production facilities much further, we're definitely going to need those workers. All right, so I think I'm at the point here where I am going to need to go ahead and more or less sort of double up on my iron production. So that means we're going to need another coal maker. Give myself a little bit of space there. Another blast furnace. And another metal caster. Might as well go ahead and build 2 metal casters because we all know how these games work. I'm going to need it. And then we'll go ahead and get some molten channels going here. Molten channel number 1. Molten channel number 2. And then, of course, now we need our smokestack. And we'll try and set it up right here. And of course, that means we will now need pipes. 1 pipe and 2 pipes. Now, I fully expect that at least initially I'm going to have insufficient workers for all of this, but at least it'll start giving me a way to make better use of all of this iron ore that I'm now producing. Okay, so go ahead and assign a excavator to this right here. Let's see here. All right, so that's showing I've got 1 excavator. Apparently he was going to get fueled up. He drove clear across the map. Oh well. All right, and then now we're building trucks again. This is slowly but surely building. We've sort of drawn down on our supply. I should probably look at building another assembly building. Okay, population increase, plus 16. All right, so that's great. That means we now have some additional people to help work our various industries. All right, we've got that mine working. I'm not sure why this thing isn't doing its thing. Yeah. Well, I'm sure we'll figure that out in time. Oh, and we now need to open our research and get some research going. So go ahead and go with settlement water so we can start watering our crops. It's going to be an important consideration. And now we also have a maintenance depot, and this is going to actually produce maintenance as a resource, essentially. So it's just the way the game abstracts it. It's sort of like your vehicle uses a resource called fuel. Well, your vehicle can also use a resource called maintenance. We'll go ahead and get that working too. Looks like our iron expansion project is gradually coming together. Full output, which I guess means that all right, so I'm going to go ahead and initially select this for just scrap. Because my idea is I want to finish getting rid of the rest of that scrap there. That shouldn't take long. We are starting to see a little bit of a trucking shortage. That's okay, we've got some new trucks on the way. And that'll hopefully help solve some of that problem here. Try and get another one going here. So if we look at one of these trucks, you can see how our maintenance is the amount of maintenance that it requires, right? Is overstocked at the moment, but it's going to gradually go down. And it's one of those situations where we had a certain starting amount to get going, but without making some of our own, it's going to end up grinding to a halt in fairly short order, right? So that's definitely something that we need to keep an eye on. All right, well, we can go ahead and speed this up for a few minutes, I think. Yeah, so as you can see, our Unity is slowly marching down. I'm not quite clear yet on how to bring it back up. I'm sure there's going to be some various structures and other types of management options I'll have to be able to try and boost that a little bit. But until then, we're sort of stuck. Our food supply seems like it's hanging out pretty well. We are not quite at the point yet where we're overcrowded. So we can probably hang tight on our housing for the moment. Very gradually pulling all of this down. Once this goes away, that'll free up a lot more space to build, because I won't have to work around it anymore. Go ahead and start another truck building here. There is a little bit of a danger that my number of vehicles are going to end up overstretching my maintenance capabilities by too much, but I'm hoping that we'll be able to get up sort of self-sustaining with our maintenance before we get quite that far. But we'll see. We'll see. In the meantime, our research on our water supply is gradually improving. How our farm's hanging out. Yeah, we're still seeing delayed harvests, which, yeah, no, that's to be expected, I think, given that we're dealing with essentially just whatever we get from rainfall. Not ideal, but it is what it is. And of course, these construction projects are all slowly churning along just because right now I'm in a shortage of construction parts. But that'll be fixed soon enough. Okay, so I don't have really copper in mining yet, so for now I'm going to more or less be reliant on my initial store, right? And of course this takes power, which is okay because I do have a generator up here that's producing power. But it's something that we'll have to keep an eye on, right? Because now we are using fuel for several different things, including our beacon, including our maintenance, and then of course all the vehicles that are running around the screen here. So getting to diesel fuel production is going to be a key consideration here pretty soon. All right, so now I have more people, and so now I need to build some more housing so that all of those new people have someplace to live. All right, and we are continuing to just churn along here. Now, I do notice that since we have some overcrowding, our Unity has taken another hit from the homelessness there. But that should be something that's fixed here pretty quick. Okay, and then our research is finished up while I was blabbing on. So I can get all of the stuff here. Sort of a tough consideration as far as what we do first. I think based on where we're at with copper smelting and maintenance, that we can probably go for basic diesel first. So we'll try that. All right, so at this point we have a settlement that's more or less past the initial hurdle of getting some basic self-sustaining features done. So we're producing food, we're mining iron, we finished up all of our collection of scrap metal. So I think we are off to a pretty good start. So I think this will be where we leave off for this video. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, feel free to leave them below. Thanks for watching, and this is Ruck Dog saying until next time, good luck and good hunting.